The House of Commons Standing Committee on Official Languages. La réunion d'aujourd'hui se déroule sous forme
Today's meeting will take place in a hybrid format. Members will be present in person or via Zoom.
Situation and in light of the recommendations from health authorities to remain healthy and safe, all those attending the meeting in person should follow the directives of the Board of Internal Economy. Je remercie d'avance les membres.
Thank you in advance for your cooperation. I would like to remind everyone that when you speak, please do so slowly and clearly. For those of you who are participating online, when you're not speaking, please make sure your mic is muting.
If challenges arise, please advise me. Please know that we may need to suspend a few minutes as we need to ensure all members are able to participate fully. Conformément donc à l'article 108.
In accordance pursuant to Standing Order 1083F and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, January 31st, 2022, the committee resumes its study of Francophone immigration in Canada and Quebec. I would like now to welcome our witnesses. Welcome first to the Honourable Sean Fraser, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Caroline Xavier, Associate Deputy Minister, Alexandra Hiles, Executive Director of the Domestic Network, Corinne Prince, Director General of Afghanistan Settlement.
Given to human, after which we will proceed to a series of questions, as you know. I'll let you know when you have about a minute left. Ceci étant dit, Monsieur le Ministre.
That being said, Mr. Minister, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have a good afternoon, and good afternoon to all the members of the committees.
Both within and outside of Quebec remains a top priority for the Government of Canada. Le gouvernement du Canada.
The Canadian government recognizes that immigration is essential to meet the needs of the labor market in critical sectors like healthcare and agriculture, and to help develop and diversify Canadian communities. The Canadian government continues to work with the Government of Quebec to support their efforts to use immigration to address labor market needs, particularly as we recover from the economic impacts of COVID-19.
We need to work with Quebec on innovative ways to use immigration to address the province's labor shortages, while also supporting the French language and Quebec's distinct Francophone identity. Of course, the French language is deeply rooted in communities across Canada, not just the province of Quebec, and we recognize that immigration plays an important role in supporting the vitality of Francophone minority communities throughout the country. In 2019, IRCC, in consultation with key Francophone stakeholders like la Fédération des communautés francophones et acadiennes du Canada, announced a comprehensive Francophone immigration strategy, which included a target of achieving 4.4% of permanent resident admissions from French-speaking applicants by 2023.
We knew we would need time to get there. The strategy has yielded positive results. In 2020, French-speaking admissions represented 3.6% of all immigrants admitted to Canada outside of Quebec, up to 2.8% the previous year. In 2021, we experienced a decline to 2% of admissions due to the global pandemic. That said, the department is making substantial efforts to return to our pre-pandemic admission rates. For example, we are awarding additional points for French-speaking and bilingual candidates in our express entry pool.
National travel. Last year, we introduced a new pathway to permanent residence for temporary workers and international graduates already in Canada. This included 3 additional streams for French-speaking or bilingual newcomers, and as of late January, there were more than 6,400 applications included in these streams. We're also pursuing year-round targeted promotional activities in Canada and abroad, including initiatives to attract more French-speaking immigrants to health-related occupations and also to work as French language and immersion teachers. En complément, hier...
We also continue with our shared goal to support attraction, and we're working on the modernization of the official language act. I'm working with my colleague, Minister Petitpas-Taylor, and recognizing the importance of immigration and proposing a policy of Francophone immigration with clear objectives and indicators. Immigration is more than just numbers. There is a considerable amount of settlement work to be done with our newcomers.
2020, IRCC implemented the Francophone Integration Pathway, which offers tailored support to French-speaking newcomers from pre-arrival through to citizenship. This approach aims to strengthen the resettlement and settlement services offered by and for Francophone organizations. Le gouvernement poursuivre ses...
The government will continue its efforts to build a Francophone integration pathway so that the French-speaking newcomers are adequately informed of the possibilities of settling in French in Canada and receiving quality settlement services by Francophone organizations. We continue to work with Francophone communities to give all newcomers an opportunity to settle and thrive in French and to make a positive contribution to Canadian society. Francophone and bilingual newcomers are essential to our future. Considerable efforts are being made every year within Francophone countries to promote Canada and to attract Francophone students and immigrants. I thank you, and we are now ready to take your questions.
I would be pleased to answer the committee's questions. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the session today.
Bravo, Monsieur le Ministre.
Good job, Mr. Minister. You did this in 4 minutes. Very efficient. Let's move on to our first round of questions. 6 minutes for each party. We will be starting with Mr. Joël Godin, who may or may not share his time with Mr. Lehoux. Mr. Godin, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If it's possible, can you tell me when I've spent 4 minutes so that I can indeed share my time with my colleague? Mr. Minister, thank you for being with us today. It's much appreciated. Quickly, you said in your opening remarks that you are developing an immigration policy that aims to attract more Francophones. It doesn't seem to be working because the results that we've seen is that it's not working. Can you reassure us in some way? Are adjustments going to be made in the next weeks and months? There is an urgent need for French immigration here. Thank you for the question. I think these measures have had a positive effect, but not. The results are meant to impact Francophone immigration. When I saw the numbers, in 2019, I think only 1.8% of there was only 1.8% of Francophone immigration. Then we made adjustments to add points for the express entry system. So in 2020, we had reached 3.6%. I'm trying to find some flexibility in the express entry system in order to be able to identify Francophones who would like to come to Canada. We also need settlement supports for these people.
Sure, I'm clear. You can tell I've been working a bit at it. There's a number of policies that I think we have advanced that have shown a positive difference. If we go further down those paths that we've seen to be successful and also introduce new flexibility with express entry, new measures for international students, and a number of other measures, I'm confident as we develop this full strategy, we can see positive improvement.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I've noticed that if you're trying to find ways to increase Francophone immigration, I have some ideas for you. Africa. Up to 80% of applicants from Africa are denied entry, and these people want to come to Canada. So we have a serious systemic problem, and the situation is urgent. Yes, we want to increase the number of Francophone immigrants here in Canada, but this is also an incredible source of labor. These people are ready to come and work. So you'll hit 2 birds with 1 stone. You'll increase immigration and solve the labor problem. What's going on with Africa? I totally agree. Africa represents a big opportunity for Canada's immigration system. For example, I saw the situation with West African student applicants.
Approval is not as high as I would like it to be. But I've seen real progress when we've taken tailored situations to meet the needs of specific countries. If I look at the student direct stream, for example, with countries like Morocco or Senegal, the students who've applied through those streams have seen a significant increase and faster results in their application as well. I don't think the policy work is done because when I look at certain criteria around the proof of funds that a person has to demonstrate, or
Excusez-moi, Monsieur le Ministre.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Minister. I'd like to bring you back to Dakar in Senegal, which is a central point in this part of the world. Can you explain the process? People make requests. Everything is concentrated in Dakar. Can you tell us more about the process for requests? What happens after Dakar?
Déjà.
You have 4 minutes, Mr. Godin.
So after someone would submit an application?
Ça te dérange?
Monsieur Rodin, you're asking about the process after someone submits an application?
Yeah.
So after they would submit an application, presuming it's a complete application, an IRCC officer would have to examine whether they meet the criteria to come to Canada. Of course, it depends which stream they apply to come to Canada through. If they would meet the criteria, an IRCC officer would be able to approve them. We see something unique, though, when it comes to, and it's not specific to Francophone or Anglophone applications. We see something unique in certain countries in Africa that have lower rates of approval. And it's something, if the committee wants to provide advice, I would
Je vous
welcome.
arrête, Monsieur le Ministre. J'ai une question.
I'm going to stop you, Mr. Minister. My question is very specific. What I'd like to know is that in the process with Africa, once the request is handled in Dakar, then where is the request sent? Is it sent to Canada for follow-up, or is it sent somewhere else?
It's not necessarily the same in every situation, and in fact, I'm looking to make further changes to leverage
parle
the
de Dakar.
capacity of the system.
I'm just asking about Dakar.
Certainly, there would be folks in Dakar could be involved, and sometimes it could be moved to a different location. I know I hear some people who have sensitivities of wanting a local person to
Okay.
look at local
Ailleurs,
applications.
Monsieur le Ministre.
What's elsewhere?
It would depend on the specific application. If you'd like to have a summary, maybe after the meeting, on how.
Oui, j'aimerais ça, Monsieur le Ministre.
Yes, I would like that, Mr. Minister, if your team could provide the entire process and all the nuances. How are these requests handled? And then finally, my colleague has decided to give me the rest of the time. I appreciate Mr. Lehou's generosity. You talked about C-13. You're happy with what's in C-13 with regards to the Francophone immigration policy. But you know what, Mr. Minister? I'm sorry, but there's 2 paragraphs. The Minister of IRCC has an immigration policy. I'm sorry, Mr. Godin. Sorry, it'll have to go to the second round. The next speaker is Mrs. Ariel Kayabaga. You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to thank the Minister for being in this committee. I think we've been in the same committee 4 or 5 times to talk about immigration, so I appreciate his dedication to this work, especially with regards to Francophone immigration. This is an issue we've discussed at length.
This question, we're all watching what is happening in Ukraine and with great concern. And of course, we want to ensure that people who are displaced by the war can quickly get to a safe place here in Canada. That said, there are expectations that the situation in Ukraine will delay processing of applications from French speakers coming from other parts of the world. Could you speak on that?
Certainly, and thank you, Ms. Kayabaga, for the question. So first of all, I think we all agree that the situation in Ukraine merits a significant response, given the scale of this unjust and unnecessary war of aggression. One of the things that we wanted to do was move as quickly as possible, so we established a system that was based on the way that we bring visitors to Canada, because that system has the greatest horsepower in terms of the ability of the number of applications we can process each year. But it's important that we make sure that we properly fund these changes, because if we don't, you're asking the same system to do more without extra resources. So to date, there's been $117 million of additional funding profiled to make sure that we are backstopping this new system with the funds necessary to deal with the volume. In the short term, it's possible that we could have some resources would have to be pivoting from one stream of business or even different departments to help out with this effort. But we intend to have the funding come into place to make sure that we can pay for these new services that we're offering, so we avoid the kind of circumstance to the extent possible that you've just signaled. But certainly there is no decision as to pull away from people who would impact Francophone applications specifically. If anything, I would try desperately to avoid that situation.
And Minister, if you can comment on that note, what IRCC is doing to address delays caused by pandemic-related border closures. Are they getting back on track?
Yeah, so just for context, the pandemic really hit the Canada's immigration system very hard in two ways. It shut down in some parts of the world our presence on the ground due to local public health restrictions, and we don't have the same flexibility to allow staff to work from home in every location in the world as we do in Canada. The second thing that it caused was a need to pivot towards welcoming people who are already here on a temporary basis who were seeking to become permanent residents instead of bringing people from other countries during a time when the border was closed for public health reasons, which I think are now obvious to all of us here. There's a number of things, if I could put them in three categories that we're doing to address this. It's really resources, technology, and immigration level spaces. On the resources front, we've added 500 staff, more than 500 staff, who are now working, $85 million, and the economic and fiscal update that's being deployed across mostly a range of temporary businesses. On the digitization, the technology piece I mentioned, we're on the verge of releasing new functionalities of the modern and digital systems. Some of them have come online already. And just in the interest of time, I'll say that we've added immigration level space so we can welcome more people this year to chip away at those who might be waiting to come to Canada.
So federal, provincial, and territorial ministers responsible for immigration and those responsible for Canadian, la francophonie canadienne, adopted a federal, provincial, territorial action plan to increase francophone immigration outside of Quebec. Can you speak on what this plan consists of and what francophones dans les milieux minoritaires
in minority settings
see out of this plan?
Oui, selon moi, c'est essentiel de...
According to me, it's essential to increase the number of francophone newcomers. This is to promote and protect the French language and culture. The plan includes a 4.4% new francophone immigration target for 2023. Measures include many supports for settlement agencies and to changes to the express entry system. In the future, it will be essential to continue to propose new measures.
Include some of the changes we've talked about around international students, include things around changes to the express entry system to give us more flexibility. I want to make sure that we don't prejudge further conversations that I intend to have with groups like FCFA, for example, to make sure that they're a part of developing the new measures that we'll introduce. But I think if we keep pushing the envelope, we can bring more and more to better protect the demographic weight of francophones in Canada.
Avec une minute qui me reste.
I have 1 minute left, Mr. Minister. I'd like to raise some points that have been raised by other witnesses. They talked about the many obstacles that are faced by francophones. For example, the French test. This is a big problem because these are people who live, study, and speak French, and they do the test and then they fail it. Would you be ready to revisit this test?
I'm always open to ways we can improve these things. I don't have sort of a specific policy analysis that I've seen on this particular point. If this is something that the committee recommends, I would be more than happy to look into it. But
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I'm so sorry, Mr. Minister. I know that this can be very frustrating. 6 minutes is such a short period of time. The next question will come from Mario Beaulieu, who has 6 minutes. Hello, Mr. Minister. I would like to start by congratulating you for your French. You seems to have had a better teacher than Michael Rousseau.
I'll take advantage of this opportunity to ask you a question on the Ukrainian refugees. Since the beginning of the crisis in Ukraine, we've been in collaborative mode. You will be familiar with the catastrophe that the Afghan refugee program was. We're realizing that this current situation is even worse. We did not propose visa-free access, as many other countries did. People who are fleeing war have been waiting with their children for days to enter the only immigration office, Canadian immigration office in Poland. one office for over 2 million people. Does that really make sense? We also suggested that there would be a charter flights and airlift to Canada with Ukrainian refugees. Once again, we were turned down. People have to pay for their own airline ticket. This is the biggest refugee crisis since the Second World War, and all you've done is begin an ineffective program and refuse the efficient solutions that others have proposed. I don't think we can continue business as usual when people are experiencing war on the other side of the ocean. What is your plan, Minister? Before beginning, I'll thank you for the compliment on my French. When I arrived in Ottawa, I didn't speak any French. I practice every week now.
I agree with your characterization of the conflict. I respectfully, Mr. Beaulieu, disagree with your characterization of our response being anything like business as usual. In particular, we started getting ready as of January 19th to have the measures in place to respond effectively. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just hear audio coming through. I think one of our members needs to mute.
Madame Kayabaga, oui.
Point of order, Ms. Kayabaga, yes? Yes, I'm raising a point of order because this has nothing to do with the topic that we're currently discussing.
Mr. President.
Chair, it's fine by me if the witness wants to ask this question. Chair, I agree with the minister. I'd let the minister answer the question. I think it's relevant. Who are we to decide the relevance of this question? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take a second. I'll just consult the clerk. One moment, please. I'll suspend for a few seconds. We have a point of order, and I have to examine this point of order. Order, but given the responses, we are in fact referring to the motion, and if the minister doesn't oppose and the official opposition neither, then we will continue. Mr. Beaulieu, I stopped the clock. You have 2 minutes 16 off the clock already. Go ahead, please. Have you finished what you wanted to say? Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll give you a minute.
Just to put into perspective some of what we've done, I've never seen the Canada's immigration system move so quickly as I have in the last number of weeks because we've had to try something new to respond to this crisis. We've done something unique in this situation to introduce a new temporary program to provide safe haven. But we've been preparing for weeks before the incursion began by moving biometrics units into the area, by processing as a priority applications that were in the queue. We've already seen more than 10,000 Ukrainians land in Canada. Now, that's going back to the beginning of the year just because that's the data set I had. But the new system has taken in excess of 50,000 applications in a very short period of time. Despite some challenges that we hear about on the ground and then work to fix, we are seeing enormous numbers of people that are moving. And even today, we've made the decision to move forward with extending settlement supports to Ukrainians who come to Canada, whether it's reception when they arrive, language training, etc. So this is a full court press, and we're going to do everything we can.
Will you add resources in Poland? What about the air bridge? I'll interrupt you for a second, Mr. Beaulieu. Well, we can continue with the subject matter then. I thought you were coming back to the motion, so I gave you a little bit of time, but all right. You know that in the media there's been considerable discussion of the number of foreign student permits given to North African students. We've heard that the Anglophones and Francophones don't have the same acceptance rate in these countries. And when it comes to the Francophone pool. Well, it's understandable that we never reach our objectives if we're refusing Francophone students. How do you explain this high level of refusal when it comes to African students, and will that change?
Just
when I saw the number of applicants from Africa, it's not really a question of Francophone versus Anglophone. The numbers are very similar. In 2019, the Francophone numbers were even higher. That's not exactly what I mean. These countries, given that there are a few number of Anglophones in them, well, that's where we would go find Francophone immigrants in those Northern African countries. Why did these countries then have the highest number of such a high number of refusals?
We have for refusals from the region is the proof of funds. We require that people demonstrate they have the capacity to support themselves when they're here, because we don't like to see students become destitute in Canada. It's something we want to protect against. It's a challenging thing when you see certain regions have lower acceptation rates to the system, of course, because you don't like to treat one group differently than the other. That's the number one reason that we see in terms of the reason that a person may be rejected from the region, but the numbers are year to year similar between Anglophone and Francophone. So there's an issue that you're raising, but not necessarily one based on linguistics.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister Beaulieu. It's already 6 minutes. Next person on the list to ask questions is Ms. Nikki Ashton. Ms. Ashton, you have 6 minutes to ask questions to the Minister. Thank you, Chair. And hello to the Minister. On January 31st, you held a press conference entirely in English. It's clear that you're practicing your French, but is the ability to speak both official languages of the country that you represent, is this a requirement for the Minister of Immigration of the country? What do you think? It's important for the government to be able to offer services in the two official languages. I don't think that's it's mandatory right now for the minister to be bilingual. I think it's important for me to French, however. I made a mistake with the very first national announcement. I'm sorry, but I won't be repeating that mistake. It was a virtual press conference as a new minister. I was the only person present. The context was different. And otherwise, I speak French at every opportunity I can. This is a sign of respect towards my French-speaking colleagues. They help by correcting me. And if I want to promote and protect the French language and culture, it's essential for me to practice French here and in Nova Scotia as well. We have a lot of Francophones in Nova Scotia, a lot of Acadians in St. Anne, for example. Thank you for this comment. However, we do have concerns that the government and the Minister of Immigration is not taking the question of Francophone immigration seriously. We were very concerned several weeks ago when we heard immigration experts talk about the challenges and barriers facing Francophones who wish to emigrate to Canada. According to Radio-Canada, the refusal rate for applicants from Northern Africa applying to come to Quebec is around 80%. This is a completely unacceptable number. And I'll also tell you that one of our witnesses, Stephen Hatfield, has said that in his 30 years as an immigration lawyer, he's noticed that with your department, French language services have gone down. These are what we're hearing at this committee. This is scandalous. You've told us that Francophone students who wish to immigrate to Canada don't have the resources to do so. On the other hand, we're desperate to have immigrants here in Canada. What is your government doing to react to this reality and ensure that African Francophone students can come to Canada and that we can change this refusal rate of 80%, which is a complete scandal? Thank you for the question. Before beginning, it's essential to understand foreign students make an exceptional contribution to our society, economically and otherwise. They're the best candidates for permanent residency, and I would like to just clear things up a bit. The acceptance rate are similar for Francophones and Anglophones coming from African countries. One important criterion used by assessors, and
to your point, there is a challenge here, but it's not necessarily based on differential outcomes between Anglophone and Francophone applicants. The challenges seem to be common to different regions of the world based on other criteria that are applied on a case-by-case basis. I'm interested in actually capitalizing on the opportunity because I believe that embracing linguistic diversity is really good for our communities. There's a huge competitive advantage. I was in Calgary meeting with an organization that promotes economic development in Francophone communities last week, and we had an exciting conversation about what we could do to actually embrace the economic opportunity by attracting Francophone newcomers from all over the world. So if there's suggestions from this committee to overcome some of these challenges, I want them. I want to be the minister who increases the number of Francophone newcomers to Canada, not because I think it's just the right thing to do, which it is. I think it's going to serve our self-interest to an enormous degree.
Thank you for sharing that. We're telling you that you are the minister. You have the power to implement measures to ensure that African Francophone students can come to Canada. It's clear that the necessary work is not being done to attract them and to change the rules so that they can come here as soon as possible. I'd like to ask you, we've clearly heard that we have not met our Francophone immigration target. Many witnesses have told us that we'd have to not only reach the target, but increase the target, so that we can make up for lost time and increase the demographic weight of Francophones here. Are you interested in doing so? Yes, and just to clarify, Minister, you're all right. I'll wait until the next question.
Quick. La prochaine ronde de questions.
Next round of questions will begin with the sharing of 5 minutes, starting with Mr. Lehoux and continuing with Mr. Généreux. Mr. Lehoux, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. Hello, Minister. Thanks for being here with us today. Currently, when it comes to economic immigrants, we've heard that there are 25,000 applicants who are waiting for an answer. 22% of the population. We need 40%. How do you explain this delay?
Just to clarify, Mr. Lehoux, are you talking about cases inside of Quebec or across Canada?
65,000 across Canada, and 25,000 are economic applicants waiting for a response in Quebec only. How do you explain this difference in Quebec alone? Quebec is really short of workers.
It's really important that people understand there's a unique, for very good reasons, unique system in Quebec compared to the rest of Canada. One of the things that happens is that the provincial government of Quebec.
I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude, Minister. When I speak to my provincial, I am in touch with our provincial counterparts. I don't like it when we blame the others. The Minister of Immigration in Quebec is starting to get very impatient. No, well, that's what we've heard, that's what I've heard, and that's what I've read.
In fact, I find him to be, Ministre Boulay est un partenaire excellent. But on your question...
Will you find solutions, Minister?
With those solutions. Perhaps in the days ahead we'll be more specific in public.
With regard to the total number of the applicants, how many are you able to accept in the agriculture and agro-food business?
For in Quebec, it will be up to the provincial government in Quebec to select every applicant for people who are coming here on a permanent basis. So it will be up to me to process what they identify as the people they would like to bring.
What the Quebec government is saying is that the province is the problem comes from Ottawa. So I'd like you to answer very specifically, Minister.
There's one clarification I need to offer. So there's the people who are invited to apply, and the levels that the province of Quebec sets are very important to understand. So if more people submit applications than there are levels to allow for them to be admitted, we will process up to the levels that the provincial government selects. They've indicated they want to continue to increase their levels. I think that's a really good thing, and we are going to be in a position to process the requests that the provincial government makes of us, and we don't get involved in the business of telling them who they should select within the levels they set in their provincial system.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Minister.
It's my turn?
Il reste 2 minutes et demie.
You have 2.5 minutes, Mr. Généreux. Minister, thank you for being here with us. Section 1 of the Charter will allow you to use positive discrimination. Is that right? When it comes to Francophone immigrants?
Different philosophical view of Section 1 of the Charter. I would never want to seek out to use... What do you mean? Just reframe positive discrimination? I think you mean an act of the state that is positively interfering, or something that has a positive consequence?
No. De faire une intervention.
That means to intervene, taking into account that we haven't been able to reach the target in the last, for many years now. We have this 4.4% target. What if we had positive discrimination to ensure that we could actually reach that target?
We need to make deliberate decisions that will help us increase the number of Francophone newcomers. I don't think it will become a charter argument until we go so far as to violate another person's charter rights. Doing something positive for one group doesn't necessarily equate to discrimination of another, in my opinion.
The problem is that we never reach this target. It's fine to have a target by law, but if we never reach it, and we haven't so far. And you'll see that today you've received a letter from all Quebec CEGEPs who would like, or rather Quebec City region CEGEPs that would like to meet you, and they really would like to. Students coming from Reunion Island have to carry out biometric tests. They aren't available on Reunion Island. They have to fly to another country. Imagine the costs involved in carrying out or taking biometric tests if you're an applicant. I carry out passport clinics in my riding. Could immigration officials not go to Reunion Island in person and carry out these tests, hold passport clinics for potential students? The problem is the costs related to these tests, the costs of coming to Quebec for those students.
It's around 15 seconds. It's hard to answer. These kinds of solutions are possible. What I think would be really, really helpful for me is if the committee is working to identify the specific strategies. I have confidence we can hit the goal for next year. I really do. I think we might be able to outperform it, and I'd look forward to other suggestions from the committee.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. It's really a tough job I have sometimes. Next speaker will be Angelo Iacono. You have 5 minutes. First, Mr. Minister, I would like to tip my hat to you. You really kept your word. 6 years ago, we were seated in a transport committee. You were sitting at my right, and I was very impressed. I'm very impressed with how you speak French. and you confirmed that you would speak French, and you're doing it, and I would like to congratulate you. I can see the progress you've made. Yes, it's hard. You know, he deserves a hand of applause. It's difficult to speak French. It takes more time. I understand. But you're getting your message across quite clearly. Please feel free to respond in English if you would like to say more. Don't hesitate. Mr. Minister, we received numbers from your department. We learned that in 2021, 29,000 permanent residents that speak French were admitted to Quebec. Can you tell us how the provinces, specifically Quebec, are involved in the integration process for Francophone immigrants? Thank you for your comment. I appreciate it. And I will continue to learn French with lessons each week. The response is different for Quebec and for other provinces. In Quebec, we have the Canada-Quebec Accord for Immigration. Under this agreement, the province has the responsibility for language training,
to better understand how to get along in their communities, and they're required to offer a similar level of services that are available elsewhere in the country. In the rest of Canada, we work directly with settlement agencies because it's an area of federal jurisdiction, but through a whole host of very good reasons, the circumstances are different for Quebec. And we work with those settlement agencies and we fund them directly rather than going through provincial governments. So at the end of the day, the quality of the services should be very similar in terms of what they're able to offer. And in Quebec, though, we do it under a separate agreement where we transfer the money and Quebec makes decisions for integration of newcomers in its province.
Monsieur le ministre, aussi de quelle manière...
How do you expect to do more to support Quebec in this welcoming process? What can be done? What more can be done to increase Francophone immigration in Quebec?
So in Quebec, I would differentiate between temporary and permanent immigration streams. On permanent immigration streams, this is really something that Quebec will have to determine its own fate, and I think they would prefer, frankly, in my conversations with Minister Boulay, to have that authority. They have the ability to have essentially their share of the Canadian population plus 5% to protect against the potential for immigration to erode les poids démographiques over time. On the temporary programs, I think there's measures that we're working on together to see if we can allow them to get access to people who could come here more quickly, and whether we're looking at people who are coming to work or whether we could continue to work to overcome some of the challenges that have been identified over international students who come from particular jurisdictions. Those are the very precise kinds of things that we do have conversations about, and we're going to continue to work in partnership to allow them to meet their immigration goals. But I'm not, from Ottawa, going to tell them what those goals should be.
Thank you, Minister. In 2021, the Department of Immigration created a temporary program for permanent residence for people who had temporary status. At the end of the program, 4,700 recent graduates that are Francophone had submitted a request. Can you tell us how many of these requests came from Quebec?
I'll have to get the specific number after the meeting. I can't remember off the front of my mind, but perhaps we'll send that to the committee if there's interest through the TR to PR program after today's meeting.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, do I still have any time left? Thank you.
S'il vous reste un gros 15 secondes.
You have 15 seconds left? No, you don't want to use it? Great. Next question goes to Mr. Beaulieu. You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So we talked about African countries. There's one French country in North America, that's Haiti. In my county, there are 49 files from Haitian people who are asking for help, family reunification, for example. Their files have been stagnating for years, 2017, 18, 19. Considering the extreme violence that's happening in Haiti, do you not think it would be a good idea to focus your efforts on that country and to make sure that the visa office could be open at more regular hours?
The pandemic, frankly, but just to be clear, we've got essentially three different categories of immigration in Canada: economic immigration, family reunification, and humanitarian. And it's really under the humanitarian stream that we look at the country conditions where a person's particularly vulnerable. In order to, sorry, you want to?
Non, mais vous répondez pas. Est-ce que vous seriez prête à concentrer des interventions pour Haïti?
Juste un problème avec la traduction.
There's just a problem with the interpretation. I'm just going to stop the time. Can you repeat the question? It's working now. Would you be ready, considering that Haiti is the only Francophone country in America that's undergoing extreme violence, would you be ready to act specifically now to facilitate the files that are coming out of Haiti?
It'll depend on the individual file. If there's somebody who's seeking to come and may qualify for our programs, if there's a particularly urgent situation, there's some precedents for acting before. We don't have a sort of specific response to Haiti the way we have to Ukraine and Afghanistan, for example. To the extent that the humanitarian situation demands a response, we always look at those things. But as part of the Francophone immigration strategy we're developing, I'd be happy to have further conversations about the potential in Haiti.
Let's go back to Africa. Would you be ready to find a way to grant more permits to students, temporary students, foreign students coming from Africa, North Africa, the main Francophone hubs? Yes, I think that's essential. Thank you, Mr. Minister. I'm so sorry, Mr. Beaulieu. The next questions will be coming from Mrs. Ashton. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you. I'd like to go back on to the immigration targets. You say you're hoping to reach 4.4% this year, but to reach the target of 2003, which is to slow the decline of French, we need catch-up targets. Do you expect to have higher targets than 4.4% for Francophones over the next years? Would you invest the efforts required to reach these targets as well?
So the short answer to your question is yes, but I just want to be specific that it'll depend on conversations that I've not yet had. I did have the chance to meet with FCFA previously, and we've been working towards the 2023 goal for some time now, and I'm confident we can achieve it. To the extent that we want to do more after we achieve and hopefully surpass that target, of course we're willing to do more. Just more specifically, one of the things I'm really interested in that I think the committee would benefit from knowing and perhaps advising me on, I think there's a massive opportunity if we utiliser d'autres flexibilités dans le...
To use other flexibility in the express entry system. If I could select people that have the healthcare skills or French language teachers, for them to come and work and live in our communities, this would be a great opportunity.
People think we can adopt to actually do this. It would be very helpful to me.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I have very little time left. I think we have to say clearly that the opportunity is there in Africa, but as we've seen, the refusals are systemic, and we need to end this behavior for Africa specifically. Let's go back to the quality of services in French for your department that are not up to snuff. We've heard about it in the committee. We've heard it from other people. Your department is not doing enough to protect Francophone rights. When will you be able to offer French language services without leading to additional delays to those who are asking for them? I believe that it's essential that clients receive quality service in the official language of their choice. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Désolé tout le monde.
I'm really sorry, everyone. The next questions will be coming from Mr. Godin and Mr. Généreux for a total of 5 minutes. You have the floor, Mr. Godin. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Minister, I'd like to come back on the question that I asked you earlier. You said in your opening remarks that you are happy with what you're seeing about Francophone immigration in Bill C-13. The problem is that in this bill, we're talking about targets, objectives, and indicators. Mr. Minister, my problem is this. We've seen it in other programs. There is no obligation to results. How can you reassure the population of Canada that this time we're going to do it? Because every program that's been talked about over the last months and years is that we've seen that we can't deliver.
So there's some measures that have had a positive impact, but I think to your point, I need to show people. Ce n'est pas OK pour moi juste de discuter.
It's not okay just to talk about this. We have to demonstrate our successes with results. If I'm able to get flexibility in the express entry system, if I invest in the settlement agencies, I think this will give us an opportunity to show results.
It doesn't happen in a couple of weeks, a couple of months. This is the kind of thing, I think we can hit our target next year. And I think we can continue to do better, and time will prove me right or wrong.
Mr. Minister, I understand what you're saying, but would you say that you need additional tools? Because today you're the Minister of Immigration, but some other day it'll be someone else, whether it's Liberal or Conservative. Should we not equip ourselves with the tools that will allow us to meet our obligations to deliver results? We keep on trying, but we're not delivering results, and this is why people are disappointed, and this is why people don't trust the government. So can you tell us how you're happy with what's in the bill when there's no obligation to deliver results?
Les raisons que je suis...
The reason for which I'm happy about the bill is that I have an obligation to defend the demographic proportion of Francophones. I agree with you on one point. We do need additional powers. The flexibility on the express entry system.
Very powerful when we increased the points for Francophone and bilingual newcomers. It doubled the success rate for people to come. If we pair that extra points with flexibility so we can find the people in our inventory and get them to the communities where they're going to succeed, and then additionally fund settlement agencies, I think we can do very, very well.
Mr. Minister, thank you. I will give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Généreux. There's 2 minutes left. Hey, relax. Mr. Minister, there are intergovernmental agreements to fund students, for example. When we say that international students, especially African students, aren't able to show proof of funds, could we not find a solution with these federal provincial agreements to help them financially? These agreements exist.
Are supports that come from other sources of funds, then that is the kind of thing that we could use. So to the extent that there is funding for people, then certainly that would make a big difference. That's not the only reason that some people are inadmissible to Canada. There's a whole host of other reasons. Some of it is based on security considerations. Some of it is based on, just in some cases, I'll be careful there, but some of it's based on whether they're likely to return home. And the conundrum I struggle with is that a lot of these students make very good permanent residents, but still don't come in because of the proof of funds or the likelihood to return back. And those are challenges that I'm trying to develop a strategy to overcome, because I think they make excellent permanent residents. Excellent permanent residents.
I think you're running a madhouse, honestly, because in our writing offices, we feel like we work for IRCC. Most of our files, and I think I speak for all of my colleagues around the table, we're managing increasing numbers of immigration files. And we have a lot of difficulty getting answers from your department. And the timelines, the timelines are unbelievable. And the fact that we have to come back and follow up for cases that are drawing out forever, people are financially stressed and emotionally stressed with these processes. This isn't normal. Are you lacking staff?
No, we've just added them, and actually we've just turned the corner. And Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge me, I'm just about to run out of time for 5 seconds. As of last week, we are really processing a lot more cases than we were in the second half of last year. There's more than 147,000 cases that have been processed.
Merci.
By the end of February, more than 100,000 approvals. It's we're ahead of schedule because of the measures we put in place. There's more still to take hold, and I'm going to keep going and keep going and keep going.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I do have to stop you. The last question for this round is from Francis Drouin. You have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will also congratulate you, Mr. Fraser. I remember when we started sitting together, your French was absent, but you've done a really good job in learning it. And congratulations also for this new position. Our committee has been talking about immigration for a long time. The Francophone community outside of Quebec has been talking about targets and how important they are. Every time a Francophone community does not meet its targets, they're slowly assimilated over time. That is why Francophone communities are so keen for us to meet these objectives. My question for you is this. Do you know if your department does a review before getting to the end of the year? So on the first quarter, we're at this percent. Second quarter, we're at X percent. And if you don't, do you think that's something you would receive as a recommendation?
So I don't want to tell the committee what it should recommend. It's for this committee too. But yeah, to answer your question, we keep track of this on an ongoing basis. It's not necessarily as regimented as you said in this state. I actually last week was asking this question of our officials who are in charge of processing, and I have to say that have done Dan Mills in particular, I don't like to single people out, but he's done a phenomenal job trying to make sure we process as many people as possible in really challenging circumstances and making sure that we don't lose sight of this fact. And Francis, if you'll just allow me, I come from a small town that was really losing people and young people fast, but I wasn't seeing my small town shrink because of the language we spoke or because of my culture. It was because of where I lived. To have that layered on top of who you are as a person and your cultural identity brings this to a whole new level of importance. I'm fixated on trying to help solve this problem, and I'm going to do everything I can, and I'll take whatever recommendations this committee has to help augmenter le nombre de nouveaux arrivants.
To increase the number of Francophone newcomers. Well, on that point specifically, even since I became a member in my Francophone region, I went from 66% and 60% in a very high concentration of Francophone region in Ontario. A few weeks ago, the Francophonie of Ontario appeared before our committee and suggested a few things. They wanted to know if the federal government, in partnership with Ontario's government, would give them more power in accessing these Francophone immigrants? Would it be a nomination program or the express entry? Are these the kind of possibilities you're exploring to help us reach our targets, whether it's federal or provincial? We don't care how we get there as long as we reach the targets.
C'est nécessaire pour les deux, les gouvernements.
It's necessary for both the federal and provincial governments to work to provide strategies to attract French-speaking newcomers. There are some provinces that have strategies. I'm thinking of Mrs. Diab, our colleague, who wants to create something for Nova Scotia, and it's already made a huge difference. The federal government also needs to announce measures for these streams.
Purely federal jurisdiction that the provinces don't have a say over. We're not going to achieve targets if one group does their homework and the other group doesn't do anything. So the answer to your question is yes, and we need to keep working together and then both advance this issue.
Monsieur le Président,
Chair, it would be an honor for me to have a minister that has a name coming from Nova Scotia. I represent the Nova Scotia community here. it'd be wonderful if we had a minister that met these targets and that these problems were solved for once and for all. Thank you very much. You have 1 minute still, Mr. Drouin, if you want to share it. Well, I ask a question. If I ask a question, he won't have time to give an answer. So that'll be it for me. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Drouin. That ends our question period with the minister. That's been an hour now. We'll be momentarily suspending the meeting, and we'll come back after with the minister's officials that are already here. either in person or hybrid. For the next hour, we have with us Ms. Xavier, Ms. Prince, and Ms. Hiles. You'll tell me how to pronounce your name? Hiles? Is everything under control, Madam Clerk? Yes? All right. We'll start with 5 minutes. Speaking time for Mr. Gord. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Gord. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here. I have a specific question. In the 3 coming years, what is the estimated rate of immigration for Canada that the department is seeking? Answer. Thank you very much for the question. As the minister said during his opening comments and during the question period in February, we set up the immigration plan for the 3 coming years. This year, we want to have 431,000, and up to 2024, we want 451,000. Next year, 447,000. That's what our targets are as of this January. Thank you very much. If ever there were massive immigration, as the government has promised, because of the Ukrainian refugees, if we have 300,000 Ukrainian refugees this year, will we have these same numbers, 431,000, or will we subtract rather the number of Ukrainian refugees and come up with a new number? Thank you very much for your question. Of course, every time there's a crisis somewhere in the world, we adjust our numbers. We want to make sure that we have enough room for a certain number of refugees. And we've done the same again this year. As the minister explained, and you may already know, the plan that was announced on March 17th is for the temporary welcoming of Ukrainian refugees. They will be perhaps wanting to return home. There may be some people who want to stay here permanently. However, one other thing we announced before March 17th was that we would have the family reunification program that would allow some Ukrainian refugees to become permanent citizens. Please note that the sound is cutting out occasionally. These are the priorities announced by the government. Currently, the biometrics tests for Ukrainian refugees are slowing down their arrival. And we can't do anything but welcome these Ukrainian refugees. Is there any way that we can increase the speed of these biometric tests? Apparently, there's a very strong demand, and the services are fairly limited. Thanks again for the question. Of course, the Ukrainian situation is very worrying. We're doing everything we can to work quickly. That's why the temporary program has been set up. It's a tool that allows us to do as much as we can to speed up the application process. You're not answering my question. What is the number? Excuse me. You're not answering my question. The current problem that we have with Ukraine is the biometrics tests. The problem of biometrics tests. Do you know the daily number of tests that can be done, biometrics tests, or that are being done currently for Ukrainians wanting to come to Canada? Answer. Yes. I'd say for every visa application center, there are a certain number of biometrics tests that can be done. What's happening now is that when an application is made, currently we have how many? We have a high, I don't have the number before me, but I can provide it to you later if the chair agrees. My colleague, Ms. Prince, tells me that we have 8,000 tests a week available for biometrics for applicants to do biometric tests. Currently, there's an incredible demand in Poland. You're talking about available in Poland. Yes. Excuse me. I'm sorry, Mr. Gord. We did a call to order, a point of order, rather. Earlier, we corrected the questions, and we need to keep this motion in mind. Ukrainians who speak French, how many Ukrainians who speak French can enter Canada? Thank you very much for the question. Very good one. You have 5 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Gord. Next question will come from Mr. Marc Serré. You have 5 minutes. Point of order. Chair, you asked me, there are Francophone Ukrainians who want to come to Canada. I'd like our officials to be able to answer. Mr. Gord, I'll give Mr. Serré his time. You understood the point of order. We did the same point of order for Mr. Beaulieu. We had already agreed on the time, and you had only 5 seconds left. Mr. Chair, I'll be starting. Chair, when you made a point of order to my colleague, did you stop the clock? No, I didn't. Well, in that case, you should be giving him the time. I added 10 seconds. Plus 5 equals 15. The question should come from the officials. It's not me who needs the time. If I understand the question properly, you want to understand if we'll be admitting Francophone Ukrainians. The answer is yes. We have French-speaking applicants. Mr. Serré, you have 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I have provided a notice of motion to the clerk. I hope that all the copies have received it. The members have received it, rather. Point of order, Mr. Chair. It's my time. Go ahead with your motion. If you'll allow, Chair, if you could correct my colleague, if you're told one colleague that he could not speak on anything other than motion, how did you authorize it for another colleague? It was a notice of motion. I think we have to agree. But, Mr. Serré, you'll speak of your motion during your time. Sorry, Mr. Gaudin. Was the motion provided within a 48-hour delay? No. So, Mr. Serré, I'll give you 10 seconds to explain what you want to do with your notice of motion. Mr. Chair, point of order. You can't give him speaking time on a motion that's not compliant. We need a 48-hour notice. We are studying French immigration. You corrected my colleague earlier, our colleague, because he had a question on Ukrainians. Wait a second, please. One thing at a time. Mr. Gaudin, I heard your point of order, but I don't know yet whether Mr. Serré's motion has to do with this current study. He has to explain this in the 5 minutes that have been allotted to him. I have no idea what he's speaking of, what he will be speaking of, rather. So, I will, if need be, call him to order if he... Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, rather. So we don't know whether the motion will be debated because we haven't given my colleague a chance to speak. You're right. A motion requires 48 hours notice to be debated, but we haven't had a chance to even hear it. He has the right to present the motion, whether it can be debated or not. Moreover, I'd like to say that we have an excellent clerk, and she'll be able to clarify the situation for us. Clear up the question, rather. Indeed, we need to hear the motion first. You can provide notice of motion orally as well. I think that's what I was explaining to my colleague, Mr. Gaudin. Mr. Serré, I'm starting the clock again. 33 seconds have gone by already. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for the clarification. This is simply a notice of motion that I'm tabling today. You've all received this notice of motion. You've received it this afternoon. It would be a study of Bill C-13. I'm tabling it because we want to inform the experts ahead of time. So you have the motion. I hope that this motion will be supported. That's what we can discuss Wednesday, and you'll have a chance to vote on it Wednesday. I just wanted then to provide this notice of motion so that we can discuss my motion Wednesday. Thank you, Chair. I'll continue. With regard to the current matter and our officials here, the FCFA, La CFA, and others have testified here, mentioning that the Francophone immigration targets had not been met. We've heard that clearly in committee from experts. In Ontario, for example, we have not received enough French-speaking immigrants for the demographic weight needed. You've mentioned March 2023 as the ultimate target. What have you done in the last few months, having heard our recommendations, to ensure that we do meet our targets, our Francophone immigration targets? Thank you very much for the question. Well, I can tell you we take this target very seriously. We're trying to reach it, and to give you more concrete examples, I'll ask Ms. Prince to take the floor. She'll be able to provide very clear examples of the work that has been done to reach this target by 2023.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Over the last few months, we've been working closely with our colleagues at Heritage Canada. We improved Bill C-32. We improved the draft that had been tabled, and that is now Bill C-13. Earlier, you talked about the obligation to adopt a Francophone immigration policy. Indeed, within the bill, we have included objectives, targets, and indicators. When we have a Francophone immigration policy, it will include those details. Additionally, we worked with the FCFA and the other members of the Francophone community. We created a working group that had two objectives. The first was to find solutions to meet the current target of 4.4% by 2023. But we also worked together closely with the community to find solutions to reach the next targets. What happens after 2023? We now have recommendations from the Francophone communities that speak to the future of Francophone immigration in Canada outside of Quebec. Mrs. Prince, what will you do for community settlement? What about funds to make sure that we can provide French language services? Thank you very much for the question. Indeed, over the last few years, I'm so sorry, Madame Prince, the time is up. I am sorry, 5 minutes goes by so fast. Next questions will be coming from Mr. Mario Beaulieu. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you. When our new turns start, we don't take a new... This is a point of order. 2.5 minutes, I thought it was 7.5, and then 6. I'm sorry, Mr. Beaulieu, I didn't understand your question. I'm going to start the clock. Okay, normally, this is a new round of questioning. We have new witnesses. So the Conservative Party had, 7.5 minutes, 5 minutes. The Liberals have 5 minutes, and normally we should have 5 minutes. And it's on the second round that we have 2.5 minutes. Mr. Beaulieu, I think I understand what you're saying. Last week, I talked about this with the clerk, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but when we decide on the time, the speaking time, it's for the full 2 hours. So everyone has a certain amount of time, and then the second block, it's 5 minutes for the Liberal and Conservative parties, and then the next round has 2.5 minutes for the Bloc and the NDP. If we start again, whether it's a full block of 2 hours or not, we don't start again at 6 minutes. So the time has been established on a full block. So 6 minutes for the first blocks, the first 4 questions, and then after it's always 2 times Liberals, 2 times Conservatives for 5 minutes, and then 1 question for the Bloc and 1 question for the NDP at 2.5 minutes. So you consider these to be the same witnesses, because normally we have witnesses for a 1-hour block, and then we have other witnesses for a second-hour block. Well, we've never worked this way in the past. Normally, we start over again. So you're saying that the witnesses from the second group can't really be questioned at all. We just get 2.5 minutes. We could talk about this later, but it doesn't really make sense to me. I'm not trying to say whether or not this makes sense to you, but I can tell you that the timing of questions per party is pre-established before we even start the committee. We all agreed. This is how things are done. Madam Clerk, maybe you have something to add. Maybe you can correct me if I have made a mistake. No, this is indeed what's happening. The following turns have the same order, so 2.5 minutes for the smaller parties. When it's new guests, we start over. So you consider that this is the same group of witnesses because it's from the same department? Yes. Okay. Mr. Chair, Madam Clerk, in your explanation, Mr. Chair, it makes a lot of sense when there's a continuous group of witnesses over 2 hours. But what Mr. Beaulieu is saying, and what I think the clerk is saying, is that when we finish with one subject in 1 hour, then we start again so that all members have the opportunity to ask 6 minutes of questions. But when we change subjects, change witnesses, in this case, like with Mrs. Petitpas-Taylor last week, it's the continuation of the first subject. And you've been very generous, Mr. Chair, and I want to highlight it because last week you granted the second and third opposition parties more time. After discussions that I've had with you and with the clerk, normally when there are 2 separate subjects and 2 separate groups of witnesses, we start from scratch. That's what I've understood. So is it clear for everyone? Mr. Beaulieu, you can start with your question. You've spent 21 seconds. Okay, so earlier the minister was telling us that to reach our targets for Francophone immigration, they had adapted the point system to grant more points to those who speak French. Can you tell us more about this? Yes, thank you for the question. Indeed, one of the things that we have implemented to increase the number of Francophone immigrants, the interpreter regrets service will have to be interrupted because of the echo coming from this witness.
Express Entry, entrée express, pour avoir la capacité que c'est reconnu qu'ils parlent la langue française et donc comme ça, ils vont avoir plus de points et comme ça leur avance dans leur application.
Okay.
How do you explain that for these same students from African countries, The refusal rate is higher for Quebec, lower for Ontario, lower rejection rate for Anglophone universities in Quebec, and higher refusal rates for Francophone universities in Quebec, and especially outside of the major cities. Interpretation will resume after this speaker.
On ne voit pas cette différence dont vous parlez, mais je vais juste voir si ma collègue, Mme Hiles, a quelque chose de supplémentaire à ajouter là-dessus.
Viennent de votre ministère. Ça dit, par exemple, pour...
The numbers I have come from your department. We have, for example, 2020, McGill, 20% are accepted, and for U4, it's 12% of approval. Service will have to be interrupted for this speaker. We'll resume shortly.
Une université peut-être anglophone ou francophone, mais chaque application est vue de façon unique et on regarde l'application basée sur l'information qui nous est fournie et il faut que l'information doit être complète. Donc,
the information needs to be complete. That said, it's not because... Thank you, Mrs. Xavier. Before moving on to Mrs. Ashton, just for the technicians, I'm hearing Mrs. Xavier double with a delay. I don't know if I'm the only one. I can hear both streams in French, but with a bit of an echo. The following questions are from Mrs. Ashton. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to say that I agree with my colleague, Mr. Beaulieu. I thought we were having two separate groups of witnesses. So I'd like to thank him for raising this issue. With regards to questions, I asked the minister earlier a question, but he didn't have enough time to answer. So the quality of services provided by your department in French is inadequate. The department isn't doing enough to protect Francophone rights. Many witnesses have told us this in the last weeks. How will you, as a department, do a better job of providing French language services without leading to delays? Thank you for the question. Our duty is to make sure that all services we offer are offered in both official languages. I can tell you that this is not something we're doing on purpose. We're not trying to offer worse service. We have recognized that in certain areas, for example, on our website, there are some products that needed to be corrected, that needed a better translation. So we're putting in the necessary efforts to eliminate this kind of situation. But I can tell you that in our call centers, over 90% of our agents are bilingual, and this is exactly to make sure that we can offer services in both languages. We hire bilingual people to be able to provide services in both official languages. We're certainly not trying to offer reduced service to Francophones. We truly, sincerely apologize, and we really want to provide high-quality services in both languages and do things right. In closing, I'd also like to spend my time to table a notice of motion that we have a 2-hour meeting with the Minister of ESDC and to explain to the committee the motivations behind the decision from the Court of Appeals on the rights of Francophones in British Columbia in accessing French language services. I hope we'll be able to debate this motion and support it in our upcoming meetings. Thank you, Mrs. Ashton. This is just a notice of motion. We don't need to vote on it. Thank you. Next question for 5 minutes. I think it's Mr. Généreux for 5 minutes. I think the order has changed. Mr. Chair, no, it's Mr. Godin. Mr. Généreux will come up next. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I have some questions from the people at the Department of Immigration. What is the situation regarding the number of employees at IRCC? The total number is not available just now at the tip of my tongue, but we have over 10,000 total employees within the department. Mrs. Xavier, I'm going to stop you right there. Can you provide the committee the situation with the number of employees, Francophone employees, bilingual employees, and unilingual Anglophone employees? We would love to have those numbers broken down. We'd also like to know about the employment stability for these people. How long do people stay within IRCC? I've heard that there's a lot of staff turnover in your department, that it's used as a gateway to public service and people don't stay. And maybe that's why the operation is unsteady. The minister was saying that there are financial motivations to refusing immigration applicants. Can you explain what the minister was trying to say when he said that? Yes, thank you for your questions. As the minister said, there are many reasons for which we could deny an application. The proof of funds is one of them. The reason for this is because we want to make sure that anyone who comes to Canada, whether temporarily or permanently, will succeed when they arrive. Especially for students in this context, there could be issues where they may not have the capacity to continue to pay for their schooling and to live independently once they've arrived. We just want to make sure that a person will succeed while they're here to study, and we want to make sure that they'll be able to complete their studies and not end up on welfare or other programs that will make them vulnerable once they're here. So we just need to make sure that they have the funds required to pay for their bills. Thank you. I'm satisfied with your answer. Now, can we say that in Canada, we don't necessarily want our student immigration to stay in Canada? In Quebec, when Francophone immigrants arrive for schooling, we would like them to stay after. So I would like you to give me your opinion, your analysis on what I just said. I'm so sorry, Mr. Chair. I missed a part of the question because there was a glitch with my internet connection. Can you repeat it? Yes, I think I can repeat it. I'll ask my chair if it's possible to grant me a little extra time because of this. Thank you. So my question, Madame Xavier, is that in the rest of Canada, I've heard that Francophone or Anglophone immigrants who come to study aren't necessarily invited to stay after, whereas in Quebec, the desire is the opposite. Is this correct? Thank you again for the question. The interpreter regrets service will have to be interrupted. That being said, we are open to students staying permanently. But with that, I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Prince, who will give additional detail.
On vous entend pas, Madame Prince.
We can't hear you, Mrs. Prince. I'm so sorry. Mr. Chair, I would like to add a few facts to Mrs. Xavier's comments. This is exactly why the department and the minister have added some streams last year. These streams are for international French-speaking students, and these streams are uncapped. We received over 4,700 requests for that stream that is dedicated to Francophone international students that are recent graduates. We would like to keep these recent graduates in Canada. They can fill the gaps that exist in many sectors of the labor market. Thank you. I have a quick question. The market research on the labor force, why do we still need this when unemployment rates are so low, especially in Francophone areas? Thank you for your question. Thank you, Madam Xavier. I'm sorry, this is all the time that's available. The following questions will come from Mrs. Latanzio. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Prince, when you were here before us the last time, I understood from you that, you know, there was a good and a close rapport and relationship with the province of Quebec in order to ensure the entrance of Francophone newcomers in the province. Subsequent to your testimony, we had before us Carl Blackburn, the President of and Chief Executive Officer of Quebec Council of Employers, who had a different take. And I'm going to cite him and ask you, give you an opportunity to sort of clarify, and so that we can all have a better picture of really what is the relationship. And so I cite, this dual administration creates political friction. Departments are passing the buck in terms of who is responsible for the lengthy processing time. The finger is regularly pointed at Quebec, which is responsible for determining the number of permanent immigrants entering its territory as the cause of backlog of files on their desks of federal public servants. At the same time, the federal government recently admitted to voluntarily slowing down the processing of Quebec skilled workers applications, citing a large inventory of applications, while Quebec had only reduced its admissions targets. Ms. Price? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the question. The last time I appeared before this committee, I indicated that the relationship between the Quebec Ministry of Immigration and our federal Ministry of Immigration was a very positive relationship. We do include Quebec in our meetings with the provinces and territories at all levels, from the minister to the deputy minister to the assistant deputy minister, and at my level, at the DG level. Quebec, as the minister indicated, has a special relationship with Canada in the sense of the Canada-Quebec Accord. In terms of the applications that IRCC processes from applications to Quebec, but are processed by IRCC, I would like to pass the specifics of that answer to my colleague, Ms. Hiles, who is from our operations sector. Merci.
Thank you so much for the question. So to build on Corinne, my colleague's answer, during the past year, and especially during the height of the pandemic, we worked closely with the government of Quebec to focus on finalizing applications from persons who are residing in Canada. So that did result, and we are aware of, longer processing times for certain categories for persons who are residing outside of Canada. Our focus for this year is really on working through those older cases, which will mean that you will see an increase in processing times, and we are working towards returning to the stated processing time, for example, for Quebec skilled workers, of 11 months as we work through applications that have been pending during border closures.
So when you say that you will be increasing or diminishing or reducing the time delays, what delays are we talking about? Like what time period can we hopefully expect?
So current processing times for skilled workers from Quebec, for example, are roughly 28 months, and we are aiming for an eventual 11-month processing time.
And would this be part of your 2023 target?
The overall Francophone admissions, yes, would be part of 2023 targets, although the 4.4% and the processing times are not directly linked, but we are working to return to the processing standard for Quebec skilled worker cases.
Okay. And with regards to your program of Express Entrée, I don't know who to address this question. Maybe I can continue with you. The minister said quite clearly that, you know, it seems to be on the right path, but needs additional tools. What would those additional tools be in order to make sure that the Express Entrée program becomes express?
Thank you for the question. So as the minister shared, or perhaps you're aware, the government has given us an additional $85 million to be able to address the backlog, of which Ms. Hiles was speaking about a few minutes ago, in particular related to the Quebec backlog. processing question. Having said that, the intent is to be able to make some actual changes to the Express Entry program. And to be able to do that, this is what some of this funding will be used for, where right now that the amendments required are not yet done.
Merci, Madame Xavier. Merci.
Thank you, Ms. Xavier. The next questions will come from Mr. Bernard Généreux. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Prince, you said subscribe to the bill, or did you trying to say abrogate the bill? Sorry, I meant enhance the bill. But to enhance the bill, you're talking about C-13. That's the bill you're talking about? C-32 was previously tabled in June 2021, and since then, at IRCC with Canadian Heritage and with stakeholders from Francophone communities, have enhanced C-13, tabled in February at the House. We added several elements under the clause on Francophone immigration policies. We added goals, targets, and indicators. You also said that you worked with Canadian Heritage. In the past, you were already working with people from Canadian Heritage. What's different this time in what you did to enhance the bill? Thank you very much for the question. As the minister noted in his presentation, in 2019, our department wrote a Francophone immigration strategy linked with various objectives. This policy is one that is not included in a specific bill, that doesn't have any specific regulations associated with it. It's an administrative policy, is what I'm saying. And this policy has already had shown a lot of promise, rather. The Francophone immigration strategy begins with the promotion in Francophone countries. That includes selection processes for all the programs we've discussed today and in the past. The policy also includes partnerships with the provinces and territories and the stakeholders to ensure that the work that we're all doing together and the initiatives, provide initiatives that respond to the needs. This also includes elements of settlement programs. In this respect, we've increased the number of service providers for Francophones in the last few years. In the past, we had 50 service providers approximately, and now we have more than 80. The services, this was to help provide services to Francophones, but also provide the services, help these providers, rather. Ms. Prince, before my time runs out, is this a confidential document, or could we have this a working document that you have to improve the results? We're opening to sharing it. This Francophone immigration strategy. Of course, you understand that this policy apparently is bringing results. That's what the minister says. And do we still have a first-come, first-serve policy when it comes to students, and particularly Francophone students who are applying for various programs? Thank you for the question. When it comes to settlement services, students arrive with via a temporary path, And currently, this temporary path does not give them the right to use settlement services. If you're talking about the processing of the requests or applications, then I'll ask Ms. Miles to answer. Well, I would like to know the why. Could you provide us a written response to my question, please? Thank you very much, Mr. Genereux. The next question will come from Ms. Kayabaga. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank our witnesses today. I'll begin by asking a question that I asked of the minister earlier with regard to the obstacles and barriers that Francophone applicants face. Francophones who have been at school in French, who have always worked in French, who speak French at home, are failing the French language test. Do you know why we have this obstacle? Why does it exist? And how is this test administered? How can it be changed so that it is of a nature that Francophones can succeed? Thank you for the question. Depending on the program, there are specific criteria, but these criteria do not target any specific country. Everyone must meet the same criteria for this test, no matter where they're from, if they're from Francophone countries or not. I can see that this test may be considered to be a barrier or hurdle. However, it's a standard test administered to applicants for permanent residence, for example. As the minister said, however, if you've heard these comments, if you're hearing this feedback and it's really an issue, then we could consider reviewing the test. We know that many people do, in fact, succeed it, but you seem to be saying that there are issues with it. So we could take a closer look at the test and see if there's a way that we could indeed, or see rather if it is indeed a barrier to Francophone speakers. I'll ask another question on this same question. I don't understand the level. As I've said, there are Francophones who have testified here before the committee, Francophones who've studied in French here in Canada elsewhere. They're Francophones born into French-speaking families, and they say that the French language test is much too difficult for not only them, but for Francophones in general. Could you please tell us what the level is then of this test, and based on what? How did you decide the level of the French required to succeed? Thank you for the clarification and for the question. I'll have to get back to you to give you more details. I'm not sure exactly what standard is used for this French language test. I can tell you, though, that the French test is based on the program to which the applicant applies. There's not just one single test. It would be useful then if you could provide a few examples so that we could take a closer look at the question. And if the chair agrees, we can provide more details to the committee on our language tests, the tests which are administered to applicants for various department programs. Chair, I would like to receive that information. My question with concerns Francophone African immigration. We find the greatest number of refusals of applicants coming from Canada. What is the problem? Answer. We definitely want to increase the number of Francophone immigrants to Canada, and definitely Francophone countries in Africa are a source of these immigrants. That's why we have this direct student stream with Senegal and other countries who send us French-speaking students. I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to know, has the immigration target for Francophone students changed? The number of people who are refused, has this number been changed? Thank you very much. We'll receive the documents then. Next question goes to Mr. Beaulieu for 2.5 minutes. You have the floor. Thank you very much. Did I understand correctly when you said that 90% of immigration officers speak French? Thank you. What I said was that in our call centers, based mainly in Montreal, more than 91% of our officers are bilingual. Why is it then that in November you opened up English language only postings? I can tell you that most of our positions are bilingual because of the increase in the number of demands and because we want to continue to provide excellent service to our clients. Some positions are English only positions, and when someone calls the call center, they have the choice to have French or English language services, and they will be directed to an officer who speaks the language of their choice. We have many, many Francophone bilingual officers. We had a witness here, a lawyer, Mr. Hanfield. He said that he's being told that he can't present his arguments in French. Even his clients want that. And often that people ask questions, his clients ask questions in French and are responded to in English. There has been no improvement. Things are getting worse over the years. How can you explain this? I can't explain a specific case in particular, but obviously it's unacceptable if someone requests services in a specific language, official language that is, that they are unable to receive the services in that language. That's not what we're trying to put in place. We regularly hire people who speak both official languages. We'll continue to make efforts across the department to do so. If you're not receiving the necessary services in French, that's unacceptable. If the clients would like to lodge a complaint with the Commissioner of Official Languages, then action could be taken. But I can tell you that we continue to provide services in the official language of the applicant's choice. Next questions will be asked by Ms. Nikki Ashton. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you. For some weeks now, some weeks ago, Madame Honoré Goulouchoub testified. She tried to contact IRCC. She had many problems with her application and could only receive service in English. You say that more than 90% of your officers are bilingual, but that's not what we're seeing in the field. How can applicants receive the service when that's not what we're hearing from our witnesses? What is happening at IRCC? Are you using English-only language agents, English-only officers temporarily? Answer. It is definitely our policy to have clients responded to in the official language of their choice. More than 91% of our positions at our call center, for example, are designated bilingual. That doesn't mean we've managed to fill all those positions. We're growing as an organization and trying to fill those positions, but whether we fill those positions temporarily or casually, we strive to have Francophone, French-speaking applicants, bilingual applicants rather, to be able to provide the services that you've mentioned. I can't explain the examples you've cited. We're very disappointed to hear that, but we are continuing to provide bilingual services. Well, we hope that that's the case because the testimonies we heard were very concerning. I also have a question, also based on testimonies, with regard to Francophone immigration. We try to organize, rather support organizations here. Could you have criteria? Could you relax your criteria somewhat so that we can receive Francophone immigrants, for example, who would be able to work in daycares? That's all the time we have. I'll remind our witnesses that there's a lot of information, a lot of numbers that have been requested. Please submit this information in writing via our clerk. If there's anything else that you believe, dear witnesses, that would help us draft our report, please don't be shy to submit that information to us. Any information relevant for this motion. Point of order, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Généreux. I just want to make sure that Ms. Prince will send the strategy that I requested to us. I just want to make sure we understood each other. Ms. Xavier said she would do so. Ms. Ashton, can you send us your notice of motion in writing? I know you've said it, but if ever, I believe it has been sent to the clerk. And Mr. Serres as well. So I'll remind people next week we have the Commissioner of Official Languages for the first hour only. The second hour will be committee work. Will be devoted committee to work. Everyone, have a great week. The sitting is adjourned. Thank you to our witnesses and thank you, Chair.